Hello, welcome to the Shippensburg Area School District Budget and Finance Committee of the Whole meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Caleb Barwin.
Thanks, Mr. Donovan. If you could pull up the presentation. I forgot. So the agenda for this evening, if you can go then, I have it. There we go. The agenda for this evening is to go over, once again, fund balance, the general fund, and then I also added in the capital project reserve fund. We're going to talk a little bit about debt service payments for next year. Hit on the governor's budget proposal that was about 2 weeks ago now. Give an update there. And then we'll talk a little bit about cyber charter impacts for the future. Look at enrollment and how that's kind of driving our need for some more personnel. We have a personnel list towards the end of the presentation. And then we'll go with a little bit of the key takeaways and go over timeline. So this is a slide that was in last month's presentation as well. The top line there, balance as of June 30th, 2023. This is our general fund balance going across the board, our unassigned, non-spendable, assigned, and committed. You can see at the top right, that was our balance as of June 30th of 2023, 16.6 million. And then going down the left-hand side, lists out all the assigned, basically, expenditures that we have upcoming. The committed numbers there are assigned by the board on the far right, the 600,000 and the 1.7 million. As you make your way to the bottom, the balance as of June 30th, 2024, the audited financial last number is 17.2 million. So that's a difference of 590,000. So we ended last year in a surplus of 590,000. Bottom left-hand side, that goes through our 24-25 budget of 71.5 million in expenditures. This is important because the general fund balance, you can only have 8% of your budget in unassigned balance. So we're sitting pretty comfortable. We only have 2.3 million. You can see there in unassigned when we're allowed to have 5.7. So overall, pretty healthy general fund balance. Next slide, this is our capital projects reserve fund. So a lot of districts use this fund for upcoming capital improvements and projects. Shippensburg kind of has always lumped it in. If I go back to this slide, you can see the capital outlay maintenance there in the middle and like future debt repay and future capital projects. Those two are listed there. It might make more sense to pull some of that money into the capital projects reserve fund, as this is what this fund is designated for. So if I go back, like the future capital projects, some of that might be like the James Bird roof that we have upcoming, different like water heater fixtures and stuff like that, which might make more sense to come out of this fund instead. The only caveat with this fund is once it's transferred from the general fund, it cannot go back to the general fund unless you're making debt service payments or if you're doing capital projects. So we have a small balance in there of about 255,000 as of January. Looking at our debt service payments for next year, on the left-hand side is all of our bonds that we have. The first column or second column in lists the principal amount and then the interest amount and then the total payment. You can see at the bottom there, the total payment for next year is sitting close to 2.5 million. And you can, when we say, like you've heard us say in the past, we budget level debt service, and you can see the budget number for 25-26 is 3.6 million. So that's in case, once we need to go out to borrow again, it's not a huge impact to the budget number. It's already kind of built in there. An important note there, the reimbursement part you can see there, that's called PlanCon. It's in like the middle of your screen there. You can see we get it for two of the bonds, for the 2017 and the 2020 bond. It's about $250,000 reimbursement from the state. They no longer do that as of, a number of years ago. They stopped reimbursing for projects, but we're still getting it for those two. One thing to point out, the series of 2016, it does mature next year, so that'll fall off the debt service schedule. You might say, well, our debt service budget number is going to go down next year when we start this budget process, but it was strategically maneuvered because our series of 2022 and series of 2024, you can see our principal amounts are only $5,000. So it was strategically done that next year when we're budgeting for 26, 27, those principal amounts will be larger. So the budget number won't really change too much next budget season. This is just another way to look at the debt service schedule. Those are all the payments listed for next school year. But the pie chart's important. Most districts have about an 8 to 10% debt service of the total budget. We're sitting at 5.75, so we do have a little wiggle room compared to what other districts have in their budget. Okay, transitioning over to the governor's proposal. These are just the high-level numbers that the governor proposed. You can see the two for basic ed and special ed funding at the top there, $75 million and $40 million. He talked about having the adequacy money back in there, so the huge lawsuit of the districts not being adequately funded. That's going to be in there for this budget again, which I'll get to that, what that means for us. The $100 million for safety and security grants, $125 million to public school facilities improvement grants, $5.5 million increase to CTCs, and $14.6 million increase to early intervention. So what does this mean for SHIP? This means that the basic ed and special ed are only going to increase potentially by 1%. So it's very, frustrating with the governor's budget compared to what he proposed last year and what we kind of got last year. You can see there we got about $650,000 increase for both. And now the best we're going to get is possibly a 1% increase. Now all this is very early. It needs to be, hashed out, negotiated. So we'll wait for more direction from PASBO and the state on that.
So these numbers reflect 100% of his.
Right.
So
yeah, that's the increase, 100% increase.
If he gets everything, so they're fairly optimistic.
That's the ceiling.
Yeah.
That's the ceiling.
Okay.
1% is the ceiling.
For basic ed and special ed, yeah. Yep. So going down to the third bullet point, the Ready to Learn block grant. So this is that adequacy money I mentioned on the last slide. Due to the state, that lawsuit where they are not adequately funding some school districts. They started this school year, we got about 1.2 million, which wasn't budgeted because we just didn't know it was going to come. So now it's like PASBO has said that this is going to be in next year's budget. So that's a significant increase for us, which is nice. But it is money that we did receive this year. So, and I will say, the lawsuit where we're not being funded properly, they're fixing that a little bit with the 1.2 million, but we're having trouble in the present. You can only see the 1% for basic ed and special ed. So the state's kind of fixing the past, but for these present years and future years, they're not really helping. They're just kind of redoing what they did in previous years. Safety and security grants, physical and mental health grants are kind of unknowns. They're in his proposal. Amounts are unknown right now. So once we get more information, I'll bring that back. And then the public facilities grants, we applied for this last year, improvement grants. We were denied. I don't know if you guys remember that. We were denied, didn't get it. The Career Tech School got it, and I believe Chambersburg got some too.
Cumberland Valley.
Valley, yep. So there's some questions regarding that out to the state right now is like, if school districts didn't receive, are they first in line? Is everyone going to have to reapply? And it's kind of, go through the pool again. We're waiting for answers on that. And then I'll just mention at the bottom there, the federal funds impact. At the federal level, they're talking about abolishing the Department of Ed. PASBO has kind of said, we don't know what that means. We do get federal funds, title funds, to the tune of about 1.7 million. So, we're kind of in limbo there too, waiting to see how that affects us locally.
So shaping that picture up a little bit, the governor's budget, not what we hoped for, and uncertainty at the federal level is really kind of tilting things back to the local level, which has been kind of the pattern we've seen for the last 50 years.
Can you remind me again what the percent of our budget that is federal funds?
It's minimal compared to what we get local and state.
Yeah.
That 1.7 million is out of what, the 69 million?
That's the total.
That's a total federal. Yeah.
That's all we get is 1.7 million.
Right. You can remember, if you remember the ESSER dollars, that was federal, but that was, COVID related.
Right.
Those are
So that's
no longer a thing.
That is all the federal money we get out of a $70-ish million budget.
Correct. Yep.
And I would also point out that the lack of knowledge about PCCD grant monies. We currently have 5 that we're depending on and we're using pretty regularly to fund things. So that being up in the air is also somewhat worrisome, given, we've taken advantage of it. And, again, it seems like last year was a year that they went more in on it. We're hoping that continues, but we don't really have information.
Like for instance, we fund our school security
Correct.
through that, which was a state mandate,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
An armed officer, right?
Correct.
So theoretically, if that goes away, we would still have a mandate, but could possibly not be funded, kind of.
Yes.
What about
Another unfunded mandate from
What about the
state.
federal, that's in the grants, federal impact, or the federal programs still be required?
So yes. So we use those monies in our title programs. Title I being the biggest one, which is what we use to support literacy and math at the elementary and other levels. We currently have a number of salaries on that that we depend on through, because in the past title money was always kind of a given. You knew you were getting. It may vary year to year, but you were always getting it. We also use it for Title II. Title III is for our ELL students, and Title IV is a smaller one for,
It's for all of them, for salaries.
right. So we used our title money to fund positions.
Are we going to be required to have those things after, if they don't?
So we have those teachers, Fred. They're in the contract and they're employed by us. Required, we would have to go through a lot of hoops to not have them. And that would be what I would refer to as a nightmare, if we don't have those federal funds.
And all the services that come with those positions.
Correct.
I will say a lot of districts would be in trouble if this federal funds
I can imagine.
does go away. Yeah, it won't just be a Shippensburg issue. It'll be probably every district in the state.
And I would also point out that $125 million for facilities is for the 500 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. That, and I also think some municipalities got in on that, if I remember the list correctly. So it's not just for school districts; it's for a lot of government / school agencies apply and compete for that money.
He was very focused on, I guess, pre-K, right? Preschool and, childcare. That was, I think, a bigger part of his budget, which is definitely needed, but it kind of hurts us with the small increases that we're seeing for basic and special ed. So continuing on with his proposal, cyber charter school reform, I feel like, this is an every year thing where the government proposes a new tuition rate that's much lower than what we currently pay. So I'll start with that lower bullet point. He doesn't have any cyber charter reimbursement in his proposal. So we received, this was new to this school year, so we're talking 24-25 current year. We received around $230,000 for cyber charter reimbursement, which was unbudgeted, but that's not in his proposal for next year. I think he did that in a way to try and get them to see that the tuition rate really needs revamped or adequately redone. Instead of just giving a reimbursement, he wants them to really focus on a statewide tuition rate. So the $8,000 per student would save us about $650,000. We're talking regular ed students. So the top right chart there I have as of February 18th, those are our cyber charter enrollment numbers. Special ed 76, regular ed 177 for a total of 253. And then those are our tuition rates at the bottom there, dating back to 17-18. You can see the increase that we've had. You can see the special ed went down from last year to this year. That's because they redid the special ed formula a little bit. So we were paying $29,000 from July to December. As of January 1, we're now paying this $26,000, which I mentioned back in October and November when I presented that this formula was changing a little bit for special ed. So there is about a $3,000 savings there for tuition for special ed. But our enrollment numbers really are increasing, so I'll get to that next year.
Are those numbers, the 13,290 and the 26,652, is that about what it costs us
No.
for a brick and mortar student?
No. It's probably somewhere, I would have to pull that. I know last year it was around 16. But I do have some data on that I can include next month.
So that's a little lower than what,
Correct.
but not by a lot.
Right.
And it doesn't include air conditioning and heating and janitors and all that other stuff.
And buses.
We'll get to
and-
that.
Right.
Yeah. So cyber charter school expense, this is just a chart that I dated back to 2016-17 to show the increase. It's been $3.1 million. So the blue chart there, or the blue bar, shows the budget number, and the orange shows the actual expense for each of the years. This is always hard to budget for because you don't know how many students are going to enroll. Incoming students, you don't know, can't gauge really how many will enroll. But we've seen a very sharp increase, as have many districts across the state. Enrollment increases, so I included this just to, we're going to talk about personnel a little bit. So I wanted some data behind it to show the need for extra staff, extra teachers. You can see dating back to 2015, 2016, where we started, we were kind of, peaks and valleys a little bit. And then 2021 to 21-22, we kind of saw a sharp increase. And then you can see kind of the mountain that formed after 21-22. And it's possibly leveling off a little bit this year. You can see it's not as sharp of an increase that we've seen the past couple years. So getting to the next, this also includes the special ed enrollment. This is also back to 15-16. Sorry. So you can see we 557 in 15-16, and now we're up to 798 for 24-25. So you can see this kind of jives with the last chart of, kind of steady, and then the increase from 21-22 was significant. And this is tough too because with special ed kiddos, you don't know with placements and stuff. Those cost a pretty penny if they need to be placed outside the district. I included this in last month's presentation, but I thought, this was also another important point, the special ed expense. So you can kind of see with the enrollment and the expense, it kind of stayed steady, and then we saw the spike and the expense followed it. Well, that red line, so the yellow line is our current expense. The red-orange line is the money we get from the state funding. So we saw a significant increase, and the state provided nothing.
So we cannot service the special education, correct?
No, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that
I'm just saying, we have to provide that service.
if students are identified with disabilities, we have to provide services to them, either in the district, and if we're not able to meet their needs, then we have to find a placement for them outside the district.
But so the amount, so our population increase, special ed, it needs to be increased. I mean, more people we're going to have to hire.
So I would say there's a correlation there, Fred, for sure. As our student population grows, a greater percentage may go to cyber, a greater percentage may be have disabilities and have the need for special education. For sure, those are all related as our population has grown. Which, I mean, if you look back by my quick math, 9 years ago we've added close to 380 students to our district. So once you do that, you can within limits navigate that. But at a certain point, you just need to add the staff to be able to accommodate them.
Yeah, and I totally understand that, but I'm trying to find them. As you said at the beginning about the money, we only got so much money coming in, and we got all these mandates put on our backs. What is your projection? I mean, we have to make a projection for what's going to happen here pretty soon, and so much in, so much out. What is your projection?
Yeah, so I included a little bit in last month's. Next meeting, March 10th, I'll have some more projections that are expense and revenue wise. Last month, it was around, I believe, $2.5 million deficit if we raise taxes to the index.
For this upcoming year?
For this upcoming year. So that was very early on.
I'm not holding you down. I'm just
right.
I gotta make a decision. I'm just trying to.
Yep. So March 10th, which is in 2 weeks, I plan on having some more firmer projections. With that, it can always change, but as we learn more from the state, and as our local revenues come in, we can kind of project what we're going to see a little bit next year too, with not only real estate, but earned income tax and interest that we make on our money and things like that. So I'll provide some firmer numbers March 10th.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then this is the personnel request list. So the list we started with was much longer. Kind of worked it down a little bit to what we thought was must-haves. So there's 10 listed on there. I'll read through them. There's an elementary teacher, a music teacher, a business teacher, which is another mandate that's coming for 26 and 27, which Mr. August might be able to talk a little bit more about.
So, as usual, a good idea. The state's requiring financial literacy. In order to teach that, you need a teacher. A lot of districts got on that train earlier, just as a priority to teach financial literacy. We weren't able to do that, but now we have a requirement to teach financial literacy at the high school level. By 2026, 27, we must have this course in place for probably ninth graders to start to experience that. So it's a good idea in theory, but it is going to likely require us to add another business teacher or another person to be able to do that, because it's in its entire grade level that needs to have it. So it takes up a fairly, one teacher, that's a lot to get through one teaching spot.
And again, no funding with the requirement.
No direct funding that I'm aware of.
And these teachers are somewhat hard to kind of find at times. The business teachers, I guess. High school part-time, middle school part-time, and special ed part-time secretaries go to full-time.
Why the need? 'Cause of
Let me run down through each one of these. So the elementary teacher, the justification for that is class sizes at the elementary level. As we know, we have a three grade bubble coming through that we have to navigate, particularly when it hits SACE. The music teacher was a board priority from last year. Business teacher, we just explained. High school part-time secretary to full-time. You know, when the expansion's done, we're going to have a back entrance. So, there's a need just based on the work level, but also, someone has to buzz kids in through the back of the building. So someone has to be at that station all day to allow that to happen. That's not the only reason we're doing it. There is a definite need there. As our population grows, there's more and more, requirements and bureaucratic things that have to happen through the office.
Not to interrupt you on that, but the expansion that's happening makes that a safe school entrance in the back, correct?
Yeah, that's the buzz in.
That's the buzz-in part. I just want to make sure everybody understood that. So like right now, when kids come to school who are late for whatever reason, just overslept, or we have a ton of kids, which I don't know the exact number, who attend classes at the university or something, when they get here, they have to walk from the back parking lot the whole way around to the front of the building. So we'll have a safe school entrance in the back. It'll be accessible for kids to come in, which...
Right. I mean, the idea of having someone stationed back there to let them in doesn't make a lot of sense. So, the technology part is to be able to look on a camera and identify the person to allow them to come in.
Can't we consider that part of Leslie's ZED program? Or?
We did debate that from her office.
Okay.
The middle school part-time secretary is the same thing. There's only really one full-time secretary there. Given the expansion of the student population and the needs, they've been requesting that for the last 3 years. Special ed, you saw the numbers go up. I've shared with you our staffing relative to other districts, just the pure processing of the information and the documentation that are required. That's really kind of a must-have. The special ed coach, we currently have a supplemental that we pay, contracted hours. So numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7 aren't new positions; they're upgraded positions. So they're not as big of a hit. We are already having someone that we contract to do those, to do 504s and other mandated special ed requirements to keep us in compliance. I will just say, there's two places that you have to get right as a superintendent. One is the business office and one is your special ed department, because either one of those that aren't functioning properly can be problematic in the future. So an SLP is a speech language pathologist. As more and more kids come with greater and greater needs, we have to be able to service them. And there are caseload limits for our SOPs that they can handle. You can actually say that if we don't hire this person, then we are contracting out because we're required to service them, and we're paying a premium when we're contracting out. And then finally, number 10 was the aquatics teacher and aide that the board requested to be a priority.
So with some of these positions that are that we previously contracted out, will we see any savings by bringing those in-house, or was it just sort of a wash?
It depends on how, it can vary depending on our caseloads. The more that we use those services, the more we pay. So the economy is that we get to have a full caseload on someone. We're not sharing someone at a premium, if that makes sense. I would say that in the long run, we're probably spending a little bit more, but we're getting more bang for our buck. and we're providing the required services.
The special ed part and it was servicing out there. Are we chasing the situation with the special ed? Are we going to get more people? We got to hire more people. Get more people, hire more.
So it's really a function of our population's needs, Fred. And what I would say is, comparatively, I shared some data with the board on how we compare in terms of the entire department having to manage that number of cases. Okay, so I would say we were lean to begin with in special ed. But this makes us a giant leap for mankind into being able to sustain and meet the needs of those kids and those populations while also keeping us out as much as possible from compliance issues.
But that's for today. What about 2 years from now? Are we still going to be looking at the same thing constantly? You refer to
without a crystal ball, Fred. I would say if our population continues to grow, that segment of the population will likely grow, or even if the percentage stays the same of identified students, the number's going to be bigger. Like right now we're somewhere to mid to low 20% of our population is identified, which is kind of typical for the region. So it's really a numbers game. Percentage of our entire population, as one gets bigger, this population is going to get bigger. I think the reason why it's on here now is I think we're kind of at a tipping point with our current staff being able to service the numbers that we have. We've got to take in my recommendation, a step forward within that department to make sure that we are in compliance with IEPs and timelines and all the legal things that come with special ed. It requires some back end.
Yeah, I understand. I'm a person. I like to be prepared for the future. If we, like you keep saying,
so
our population getting more and more and more, or we just whack-a-mole, bam, it's good. Next, we got to whack them again. Next,
yeah,
like a plan.
Fred, I would say there's a ton of needs, and as Caleb alluded, like I know 10 doesn't seem like a very great narrowing, but it is, and depending on how the budgets come in, we understand that we may have to look at, trimming this down even further. But this was the first pass of a larger list. What did we think were the most must-haves, to present to the board?
I understand
with the rationale behind them.
Thank you.
So just reminding the Act 1 index of the 5.3%, that's as high as we can go to raise taxes to, and that's the other districts in Cumberland County. This is just our history again. You've seen this slide a couple times. We're kind of on the downward trend. We were at 7.1 last year. Now we're down to 5.3. We'll probably keep trending downward.
Caleb, can you give a maybe brief summary of what or how the Act 1 index is set?
Yeah, I can provide that data next meeting. It kind of, there's a state index which I can get you, and then you kind of either fall, kind of above or below that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can provide more detail on that March 10th for sure. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone saw, I think last week, the Auditor General's office came out with a report. They did an audit of the cyber schools. If you haven't had the chance to read, it's a very long report. I just suggest skimming it, or looking at I would say the CCA portion of it, the Commonwealth Charter Academy portion of it. This is local taxpayer money, a lot of it, and they audited what they're spending, basically, our district's money on.
Taxpayer money.
Correct. So this chart, it starts on the previous page, but Shippensburg is on this page. So that building that CCA is building in Shippensburg, out by the highway, they put that in here, and it costs what, $3.7 million there, you can see. And it goes over the different costs. But the important point here is they're putting in 26 of these buildings across the state, just CCA. And since 2021, they had a cost of $196 million in total to put all these 26 buildings across the state. And they didn't have to borrow a single penny. It was all just generated revenue from districts. So when you look at our school and we're, struggling to update our facilities with the money we have, not put the burden on the taxpayers, and then you look at this, see that a online school is putting 26 buildings across the state to the tune of $196 million and not having to borrow a cent is pretty crazy and substantial. And then this caught my eye, and then if I go up, Leslie, if you could scroll up to, I think it's page 35. So sticking with CCA, this goes to show that it's like they have so much money they don't really know what to spend it on, I guess. A little bit higher. So you can see there, employee bonuses. CCA paid approximately $22 million in bonuses to all CCA staff and mentors during the audit period, including $9.5 million in each year, 21-22 and 22-23 fiscal years. And it details out the bonuses there for the last 3 years.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is not to necessarily denigrate those people who go to cyber. Okay, it's really about fixing the funding formula. Okay, like parents having the opportunity to choose the education that fits best for their kids, understood. It is just the gross inequity of the fees that are required to support that when, clearly if you have money to pay bonuses and build $196 million worth of buildings, maybe you don't need the $27,000 for every special ed kid that we send there. I think it's a solid argument, and it's my hope that our legislators are listening and have read this report and can bring some common sense to that funding formula, because it's not about getting rid of them. It is about adequately funding everybody who's educating kids. Clearly this report shows that there's work to do.
Some of us might have got an email from Ed Voters PA. Susan Spica sends that out. I just looked it up. They have a $590 million general fund surplus. And that's all people's property taxes.
Most of it, yep.
Yeah. So it's nice that we're getting that reimbursement down to 8,000 instead of what it was, but
that has a very hard.
Well, yeah, I don't
will
know
be
if
a
it
hard
passed.
sell to pass.
It's nice that it's being proposed,
Right.
at least.
Correct.
Yeah.
Who owns CCA? Do you know?
It's a for-profit corporation.
So the private individuals that are making the money off of our taxpayers.
Yeah, I assume. I don't know that it's publicly traded or anything. I don't know.
Fred, I actually don't know who the owners are, but
Another quote: if a student goes to CCA, the computer thing, and doesn't pass or doesn't put any effort in it, can they come back to us?
they can and often do, Fred, and I think that's part of the issue. Is sometimes they come back having fallen further behind, and they can be removed from CCA and returned to the home school.
So you have to make up the difference that they or
It's a challenge for sure. Some students go and have great success. Others not so much.
Just one other thing about that, because I have not read this whole thing yet, because you weren't lying. It is, I printed on both sides in effort to save paper.
I can't believe you printed it out.
It's 200 plus pages. So haven't had enough reading
That's
time.
a dedicated school board member right there.
But you mentioned like employee bonuses. There's also things like they have like 70 plus cars in transportation fleet,
Yeah.
which doesn't make sense to me because everything is online. We're not transporting
Scroll
kids.
right there, the vehicle fleet. Yep.
You know, there's right there's the other one, Family Fun Fest event. Like that's great. Like for instance, Nancy Grayson Elementary is having a family night at the local roller skating rink next week, but the PTO pays to rent that place out, and then parents pay to rent their kids' skates for like $5 or whatever it is. Not cybercharge, not CCA. Like it's like here you go. Like here's Hershey Park passes. Here's this. Like all of those things, I'm assuming are in here. I've heard these things for a couple years. Like, there's a lot of, I don't know, I'd call it fluff in that that budget that they're able to just throw money around at things. While this isn't a Shippensburg issue, this is a statewide issue. That's the thing that can't get lost. Is every school district fights this, but there's a whole lot of people, whoever we guys talked about, who owns it. Somebody's making a whole lot of money off the backs of school districts and taxpayers, in my mind.
And you got to think that their expenses don't compare to what ours do to teach a student.
Right.
They're not paying for, you know, the transportation, the food service.
Buildings, air conditioners,
Upkeep.
heaters. And they, with that kind of money being thrown around, they probably have very well-paid lobbyists.
All right, if you go back, yeah. So that just about wraps up. Just some key takeaways and cost drivers that I'll put some numbers to in the March 10th meeting. You know, our medical cost increases of 10%, the cyber charter costs and enrollment increases that we talked about tonight. You know, an increased enrollment leads to additional personnel needs, transportation increases, and outside special ed placements. Salary increases, we're still in negotiations with the teachers, so that's a little bit unknown. And the state needs to fund our schools adequately because the burden gets passed on to local taxpayers.
I don't know if you can speak to it, but with the contract negotiations, the goal's just sort of always keep the funding as level as possible kind of thing, or are we expecting some increases with the contract? If you can't say anything, then just
We're still working around those questions, Dr.
Okay.
Lyon.
Still negotiating.
right. But that's an area where we could see increased costs as well.
Typically, unions don't ask for less.
Yes.
So budget timeline, you know, we're at tonight, and then we have a quick turnaround, couple weeks, March 10th as our next meeting, which I'll provide some more projection-like numbers for revenue and expense side, and we can kind of talk about what a percent tax increase looks like, and I know it's big here about the equalization, the step values and all that. I did look at that, and I'll have to go back and look at it again, but it's not like last year where it was very lopsided. It's a slight decrease to Cumberland County and a little bit of an increase to Franklin. But I'll put that in next.
Caleb, is that, and I'm just going back, not to slow us down because I know we're almost done with this, but where is it? Whatever the Act 1, whatever that slide number is.
Sure. Yep. This one? Or you want the?
That one there. So for instance, like I see 5.3 and say that looks very similar to 5.4. I'm smart enough to figure that out.
Yep.
The 7.1, as a Franklin County resident, I was on the lopsided end of that last year, like a very substantial, like grit my teeth whenever I sent that check in the mail. But you know, but the 5.3 and 5.4, so you think that would come out as similar? So like 2 years ago when I got my bill in the mail, it was whatever it was. It would be similar to that now.
Like the increase you're
Yeah.
talking about? Maybe a little bit more just because of how the assessed values have increased from year over year. I wouldn't say it wouldn't be a huge increase,
Yeah.
but yeah, probably pretty similar. And the compound of the last tax increase. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and then
Some
one
of it
other
would
thing to
probably be
note on
similar.
that, and I know you said you're going to bring it on the March 10th meeting, but the Act 1 index, like there's numbers that were 2.5, 3.1, and I'm sure we could pull this and show, but like as a district, we did not taxed to the index numerous times.
Right. Yeah.
So even when those numbers were like 2.5, like that's I'm sitting here as a taxpayer and I'm like 2.5 sounds better than 5.3.
Right.
But like as a district, as prior school boards did not tax the 2.5, which would have been a steady increase through time.
Correct.
And once you don't tax that, if I'm right, you never recover that.
Right. That there's a compounding effect year over year. You know, you can never go back. You lose that potential increase. That
Again, not to personalize this, but like I think my first year I lived in Franklin County, I got an overcharge because of what the school board did not do in tax increases. So like I got a check in the mail for a couple $100 and I was like, well, this is awesome. I like Franklin County. And then, but it all ties together.
Yep. Yeah, and I think there was 2 years, I believe, of no tax increase.
Back-to-back years of no increases, yeah.
So now partnered with the steep enrollment increases, that's why you've had to increase to the index. Because of no tax increase those 2 years, and now you're seeing the increase in enrollment, which is just driving expense through the roof. So there was no question.
Yeah, that double no tax equates to about $1.6 million out of our budget every year. That we would have every year. That is missed opportunity, which I understand. No tax increases are great, but it does impact us. Sitting here.
I not to interrupt you, Dr. Long, but I think the lesson to be learned, this is my lesson that I would learn going forward, was that when that Act 1 index comes down, and it will, we're on a decline now.
Looks like it, yep.
It's probably a good idea, just my opinion, not to say no tax increases at all, because at some point that does catch back up to you, which we saw it here in Shippensburg. Steady and manageable, personally, like as my own financial family budget, like steady, come to be expected, reasonable, like would be much better, I think, for at least speaking for me, than a sharp increase. Yep. Sorry, Dr. Lyman, I stole your.
That's fine. You may be covering this later. Do we have any LERTAs out there that are still,
Not that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure they're all.
we've finished all those? Okay.
And I would refrain probably, or like to refrain from
No, we should never do
doing any in the future. Yes.
What was that?
when the it's usually the big warehouses come in and ask for a tax break.
For up to like 10 years, could be. So.
Does anybody know how many we gave? This goes back years and years, because
I'd have to look.
I remember the first one, but I don't know how many happened after that.
Reliable sources are saying one.
One? Okay. I remember that one.
Yeah.
So back to the timeline there. Short turnaround, March 10th. And then we'll have the proposed final budget on April 14th for discussion. And then April 28th, the board will have to seek board approval for the proposed final budget to meet state requirement for advertising purposes. And then we'll have a few in May, and then seek board approval for the final budget June 9th. Thank you. Any other questions?
We'll just have a brief intermission until the Committee of the Whole, and we have the FFA presentation.
Yeah, friend of ours. Friend of ours, Mason Monster. He's under finance.
Okay.
All right, it is 7 o'clock. We are going to get started. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. August.
Thank you. Two quick presentation, or not one awesome presentation from our FFA. I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Beers and Mrs. Bolt to share their experiences and have their students share their experiences with FFA.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenna Kirby, and I'm serving as the president of the Shippensburg FFA this year. With me, I have the rest of our officer team who will introduce themselves as they come up. For those of you who don't know what FFA is, it is a national organization that focuses on leadership skills and explores careers in agriculture. Our chapter was established in 1930, and we have been continuing to educate students on agriculture topics since. The national membership has recently surpassed 1 million, and our chapter has around 280 members. Without your support, we would be unable to run our chapter and educate students on how important agriculture is. We greatly appreciate all of your contributions to helping this amazing organization.
Hello, my name is Emily Deal. I serve as the chapter secretary. This morning, the horticulture class made these floral arrangements to thank you for all the support from the former years to years to come. Without your support, the FFA chapter would not be where it is today.
Thank you very much.
Such as adding the second teacher to the ag department or helping build the greenhouse. We are excited to see where your support will get us to the future. Thank you guys for everything you do.
They like live next to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Good evening. My name is Krista Koch, and I am serving as the Vice President of the Shippensburg FFA. Supervise Agricultural Experience, also known as SAE. SAE gives the students a real-world agriculture experience outside the classroom. Students keep an updated record of their agriculture-related projects. Students can have unpaid or paid placement, entrepreneurship, research, and other projects as well. Personally, I have two. I have my unpaid placement at my parents' dairy farm that I help run every single day, and I also have an entrepreneur project about my dairy cattle that I have my own herd and they have expanded over the years. Many of our members show these said projects at Shippensburg Fair and even the Pennsylvania Farm Show and also other places as well. Example of some of our animal SAE projects that our students have raised includes Luke Malin with his turkeys for the farm show, which were then donated to the PA Food Bank. And Maddie and Mitchell Muster market swine that has been very successful by overcoming many challenges that they face, having not grown up in the showing livestock like the rest of their competitors. I encourage each one of you to visit our local fair, Shippensburg Fair, this summer. We have members from all over throughout the week in the livestock and dairy barns. As you walk through these barns, I want you to look at the hard work these FFA members have put into their SAE projects. The long hours we spent day and night, the tears of joy, but also the tears of frustration and sadness. The passion we have for animals, and even ask them a question, I'm sure our faces will light up as we love to teach the public about our industry. Look about the trust and teamwork we have built with our animals in the show ring. See the responsibilities that we have and love doing for our animals. Look at the bondage between the people through the FFA and also the love that we give our animals. I really hope to see each one of you come out and support the Shippensburg FFA members at the fair. Thank you.
Hello, Hello, my name is Haley Freeman, and I'm this year's reporter. This past week was National FFA Week. National FFA Week has happened every year since 1948. It was to honor George Washington's birthday and his contribute to American agriculture. To honor National FFA Week, we had many fun things this week. Tuesday was Camo Day at school, and after school we did community service by making pot holders for Meals on Wheels. Wednesday was Western and Hat Day, and all the money from the hat stickers to be able to wear a hat was also donated to Meals on Wheels. We also did a taco teacher luncheon. After school, we had game night and played games such as Jeopardy! Thursday was Patriotic Day, and we attended a workshop on communication and leadership with one of the National FFA officers. Afterwards, we went bowling at ABC East in Harrisburg. Finally, Friday was Blue and Gold Day to honor the FFA colors, and after school, we had an FFA member ice cream social and watched Twisters. Finally, to show our teachers our appreciation every day last week, we had snacks in their break room and gave out engraved keychains that say Shippensburg FFA that were made with our laser engraver.
Hello, my name is Anthony Locchiato, and I am this year's treasurer. Our Shippensburg FFA chapter engages students with many activities throughout the year. Some of these activities include building wood projects such as the wood coasters that were gifted to you in our agricultural mechanic class, growing and caring for plants in our horticulture class for the spring plant sale, fixing and working on small gas engines in our small gas engines class, selling our delicious snacks in our agribusiness management class, and event planning and public speaking in ag leadership. These activities teach students many skills such as teamwork, cooperation that will become useful to them as they develop into upstanding citizens of society.
Hello, I am Naya Carball. I am this year's chaplain. As each year passes, our Shippensburg FFA takes part in many community service activities. Some of the activities we have done this year consist of making pot holders for Meals on Wheels, Adopt a Highway, and Weston's Toy Drive. For National FFA Week, we made 47 pot holders and collected $65 with our hat day to donate to Shippensburg Meals on Wheels. We have been helping clean up parts of Old Scotland Road for Adopt a Highway for more than 10 years. Additionally, we have held Weston's Toy Drive for 5 years. Other ways we have given back to our community in the past have included going to local nursing homes and doing activities with the senior citizens, making tie blankets for nursing homes, making dog and cat treats for Cumberland Valley Animal Shelter, as well as helping with Franklin County Fall Farm Fun Fest. These community service activities help students be able to give back to our community in the same way it gives to us.
Every year at the Pennsylvania Farm Show, FFA holds Midwinter Convention, which is a ceremony where members are awarded their highest degree and new members receive their first FFA jackets. This year, there were over 511 Keystone degrees given out. The Keystone degree is a state degree given out to members who are considered to be the top members of the PA FFA Association. This year, we had 3 Keystone degree recipients: Mitchell Musser, Krista Kohick, and myself. We had a record-breaking number of jackets given out with 1,369, and 19 of those members were our own. Midwinter Convention is one of my favorite events in FFA because it highlights those leaving the organization and those who are just starting their journey. We also had 2 teams performing demonstrations at the farm show on the Lancaster farming stage. This FFA competition requires students to give a 15 to 20 minute presentation based on an agriculture topic. The first team demonstrated how to give injections on animals. They went over different types of injections and the locations to give these injections on different species of animals. The second team did a demonstration on how to milk a cow. They went through the process of milking a cow with a machine and also what happens to the milk after it leaves the cow. The purpose of the farm show demonstration is to educate the public on how different agriculture topics and expand the speaking skills of members who partake in this competition. Once again, I would like to express my gratitude to each one of you for your contributions to the Shippensburg FFA. Without you, we would be unable to do any of these things. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask myself or one of our advisors. Thank you.
I have a question. You said there's 200 some members?
Over 280.
I'm amazed at that, because every time I look up, a farm's going down and a house going up. Do you have that many to have that many members in the FA? So you must be doing something right to keep the girls there. My man, you're the only one here. And there are other, you're like the man in the, everybody around you, you get to pick, or there are other men in there?
There's the amount of men in the FA has definitely increased over the last few years. They've had more male members enrolled.
Oh. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question. Do you still like work on, like I was in FFA years ago. Do you still work on, like, farmers would bring wagons in and they'd work on them for them as long as they bought the materials, or you don't have the room to do that?
We haven't done that in recent years, only because with doing our courses, our 9-week courses, and to get through all of our curriculum and stuff, it's challenging to get through all the curriculum that we have and then do an additional on top of that. If we, in the past, the teacher before me, like over 20 years ago, had a class that she, a specific class that she had done that in. So if in the future, we maybe might be able to add that back in, since we have Ms. Foltz now. We did add 2 new classes here recently, it's our second year, so we added Companion Animal 2, which was because Companion Animal Care is our most popular course, so we added a second level to that, and we added Agribusiness Management. So I know that I've had other people ask me that too. You're not the only one who's asking about working on projects.
I was just curious. The other question I got is, okay, you guys show animals and stuff, and you know, if you win grand champion, do you have to sell your animals, or can you choose not to sell your animals? And if you do sell your animals, how do you part with them? I mean, you just raised them up from little. How do you just part with them?
At the Shippensburg Fair for market livestock, you do need to sell, but pigs go to slaughter immediately because of swine flu and other diseases. But you can do buyback with some animals. You still have to buy your animal back. So.
Okay.
And to answer the second part of your question, we all know that like where meat comes from and how we need to raise these animals to feed other people. So I think that makes it a lot easier to raise an animal because we know the purpose of it.
Not everybody understands that, though.
Yeah.
And Dr. Lyman's not allowed to say anything.
But I understand that's probably where some of the tears come from that you were talking about earlier.
Especially with younger kids.
Yeah.
How many of you were raised on farms? Maybe 2. Okay, 3.
So FA and just for farmers?
We have a lot of different competitions we go to for different aspects. Like we have veterinary science competitions and speaking competitions. It's like everything.
Oh, I always assumed that FFA was, you had to be, you're raising animals and then you're on a farm.
Actually, only 10% of our members are from farms. So the other 90 might not have any agriculture experience or just, but that's for FFA.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Thank you.
What life skills do you think you've learned by participating in FFA that you might not have had the opportunity to practice or master even? And that could be for everyone.
Definitely public speaking. If I wasn't in FFA, I wouldn't be able to stand up here and talk in front of all of you.
So, Mr. Bard said he was in the FFA a couple years ago. I was not in the FFA. However, I did take the Introduction to Horticulture class in the fall of 2005 in my senior year here, so I appreciate the flowers because I don't remember a ton of everything with it, but I was one of 2 males in that class, and it was incredibly interesting. And what little bit I do remember of flowers, my wife appreciates. Birthdays, holidays, anniversaries. And then Mr. August kind of stole my question, because I think it's one of the I don't want to say unsung, but it might be, because I don't think anybody realizes all of the events that the FFA members do throughout the course of the year. This isn't like hey, let's join a sports team and we're done at the end of football season or basketball season. Like, this is a year-round commitment in the summertime, and I think that shows it's a good word. Well, great credit to all of you for being committed to that, and then the things that you're learning, like public speaking. I mean, I played sports growing up, and I didn't learn anything with public speaking from doing that. Looking back, maybe I should have taken an FFA-related course or joined the FFA when I was a freshman, and I could have been better at public speaking now. But great work for all of you. I think it's amazing, the commitment that you show to your program. So best of luck with everything in the future.
Thank you.
Just one follow-up. How much has the local chapter grown over the years?
So when I first started, I probably had like 30 members, and then in
14.
Oh, thank you. And then in 2014, the Pennsylvania FFA switched to affiliate membership. So everybody who takes an agriculture course at Shippensburg High School is automatically an FFA member. So, and then with Lisa coming on 3 years ago, our membership has grown, and I do not remember that number off the top of my head from
I
what.
was trying to set that up to be, since adding another teacher, participation has grown.
The year that I arrived, I was hired in July, and till I got to the school, we were able to add the full second curriculum, or the second set of classes. So that first year was initially pretty small because it was such a late add. It was after course selections, all of the things. And that first year was right around 210. And in the 2 years that we've had where the second set has been fully on the course selection list and planned ahead of time for that, we have grown by at least 70 members. That doesn't all credit go to me. With the expansion, we also in that time frame have had the Sam's FFA Club added. A lot of our interest with the Stoners down at the middle school. We go there every 2 weeks roughly to work with about 30 to 40 middle schoolers.
So we're building a pipeline.
For sure.
In the middle school. Awesome.
And that middle school program is done in a tremendous thing for our program here too. And so, and I know that there's a lot of middle schools in the area who have recently gone to adding middle school chapters, like Big Spring and Cumberland, Chambersburg and Cumberland Valley. So.
Great.
Do they still have the Robert's Rules of Order competition? You still do all that?
Yes, that is called parliamentary procedure. I am an accredited parliamentarian, and I have coached parliamentary procedure teams in the past. That is a little bit more of an intense competition, requires quite a few months of prep, so we haven't had the ability to do that here in recent years, but we look forward to expanding into that again.
We would appreciate it if you don't judge us.
Yeah, I was going to say, that makes me nervous now.
I was sitting here and I looked around the table and everybody's eyes perked up because they were like, whoa. So, wow.
I just want to thank you all for coming. I am definitely a huge supporter of the FFA, and one of my favorite events is the plant sale. My basil is still thriving in my kitchen, so it's got to be a record for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have an additional presentation from Dr. Donat for the Committee of the Whole.
They can leave, can't
they? FFA, if you want to make a graceful exit, you're welcome to. You're welcome to stay as well.
I thought it was all farmers.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And some. Let's come.
Yeah. The thrill is gone. Back to normal.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So what I'm here to share with you this time around is our mid-year Acadience data for math, that happened in the past month, and this is for grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. We actually go ahead and go to the next slide. So what is Acadience? Acadience is a screener that we administer 3 times a year, and we administer it to kindergarten through 5th grade in 2 subjects, math and reading. And the purpose of doing this is to be able to identify instructional needs and to help us monitor which students are at risk, and also to evaluate the effectiveness of our instruction. Next slide. So when we look at the data-informed decisions, teachers and specialists and administrators all use this data, and they drill down into the data to determine which students need specific support in specific areas. It helps them to group students for small group instruction, and it also helps them to determine who may be in the most need of the specialists, and it helps them to determine if their instruction and interventions are effective. Slide.
Just to interrupt. So, Fred, you've asked in the past about how are we helping kids?
Yeah.
Like this is the data that allows us to make those instructional decisions using live information.
That's kindergarten to 3rd.
Mm-hmm. It actually goes through 5th grade, but today I'm presenting the data for kindergarten through 3rd grade for math. So the way that Acadience works is it provides us with a benchmark. So the benchmark is what they expect the students need to learn to be able to progress and be successful at the next learning level. So think about it this way. In order to be able to add, first of all, you have to be able to recognize a number. You have to be able to count. You have to be able to then eventually add numbers. So each of those would be considered a benchmark to some degree and allows students to progress in their learning. So the students who score at or above the benchmark, those are the students who are most likely to meet subsequent learning goals with their core instruction. So their regular ELA curriculum, regular ELA time, those are the students who will be successful, who are likely to be successful if they score in the blue and the green. If the students score in the yellow, that indicates they may need additional support beyond the core instruction. So it could be a small group with the teacher to provide another review session or an alternative way to understand the concept. And then red indicates students needing intensive support to be able to meet the next objective. Those students are going to need a lot more time, a lot more instruction. They're going to need a lot more practice with these concepts to be able to get to the next level. And what you're seeing on the screen on the right-hand side is how Acadience data looks. It'll break down the total number of students that have been tested, and it will provide the number of students in each of those categories and then the percentage of the students in each of those categories. Go ahead to the next slide. So there's 7 math measures that are part of this screening exam. So the first one is that beginning quantity discrimination, and what the students see, and I should add, with this screener, the teacher sits down with the students in the younger grades. It's one-on-one. It's a real quick measure. It takes less than a minute for some of these areas to be able to test. So the beginning quantity discrimination, the teacher's showing the student a block that has 2 groups of numbers, and it's asking the student to determine which side has more dots. And that's one of the screenings. Another one is identification. So it asks the students to read what numbers those are, because that's a critical skill to be able to do math down the line. They also ask next number. So if I say 8, the next number is, and that would be part of the assessment. There's also an advanced quantity discrimination where this time instead of showing dots, they're showing 2 different values. And you need to be able to tell the teacher or the test administrator which side is the larger number. And then there's missing number fluency, so they'll show a series of numbers with a blank. and you're trying to tell which comes next. So in the case of the example on the screen, it would be 25, you got it. And then there's two other areas, computation and concepts and applications. And those are for the older, more advanced kids. That would be things like adding and subtracting and doing a word problem, that type of stuff. Next slide. So with math, the number of students moving to below or significantly below the benchmark to being at or above the benchmark from the beginning of the year to the midpoint of the year, which was in January. So at kindergarten, we had 40 students move from being below the benchmark to being at or above the benchmark. That's huge, and I want to explain why that is such a big deal, because the expected benchmark increases over the academic year. What the benchmark is at the very beginning of the year when you're entering kindergarten, for example, it's a different benchmark by the middle of the year because they expect those students have learned the half year of content and that they can now do those skills. So when we're moving a student from below benchmark to at or above benchmark, that means they've made up all of the lost ground and they've also done all of the learning that we would typically expect during that half year point. So it's very challenging to make this accomplishment. So this is a really big deal.
And to be clear, these aren't the number of students who are proficient.
Correct.
This is the numbers moving towards proficiency.
Towards. Like this is the kids who made huge strides this year so far. So students who scored at or above the benchmark at the beginning of the year may struggle to score at the benchmark mid-year. So it is, don't want to say common, but it does happen that students who score at the benchmark at the beginning of the year will not score at the benchmark at the mid-year because of the additional complex concepts that they've been learning. So for a kid to go from, I can see there's more dots on one side to the other, to be able to say that the number 8 is smaller than or larger than the next number, like that's a big conceptual shift for kids. So there are times where we'll see that kids aren't, that they're falling behind, but it's only because kids learn at different rates, and that so it's not necessarily a huge alarm, but it does happen when you see data like this. So in kindergarten, we had 40 students move from below to being at or above the benchmark. Huge, exciting deal. In first grade, we had 23 students make that same shift. And in second grade, we had 5 students make that shift. Go ahead to the next slide.
Can I ask a quick question on those? Since the numbers decrease as grades go up, is it harder to make that jump?
It can be.
Once you're further along in your...
It depends on, and this is where, because I am not the daily teacher, I can't tell you the nuances of all of this test, but I do know there are certain grades where they expect to see a dip in first grade. That is one of the areas where traditionally the scores do go down a little bit. And so it's a huge deal that not only did our first graders meet, we made that up. That's a really, really big deal, especially the number of kindergartners that made that up. When our reading coach talks with peers, they've not seen that type of gain in a long time. It's a really unusual gain to make, and they're really excited about it.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
40 students, and how many kids, what percentage of kindergarten does that?
We can look at that. I do have that information for you later. I was trying to give you a high-level overview. Yep.
So let's say those 40 students, they made this lovely jump as kindergartners. Is it typical that they would maintain that? Or, I mean, you said there's sort of a first grade dip.
That depends on a lot of different things. And that's one of the things, do you want to go to the next slide? So some of the things that it depends on. It depends on quality instruction, it depends on quality curriculum, and it can depend on quality intervention. So do we have a math interventionist? In this district, we do not have math interventionists. But what we're seeing is we really think these gains are coming from having a quality instructional coach. So our instructional coach, rather than just working with a student or a small subset of students, she's going and she's working with our district teachers. She's teaching them new strategies, different strategies of how to be more effective in teaching math concepts. And I think that's what we can attribute these gains to, is the way in which those elementary teachers have absorbed her information and then applied it consistently with those students.
So an instructional coach is really going to work, if you remember those triangles I've shown you before, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Instructional coaches really work at the tier 1 level to make sure that there's consistency, the curriculum is up to par, it's aligned to standards, and the instructional strategies being used are research-based and driven. So, instructional coaches really deal with that tier 1 intervention, which is 80% of your kids need that tier 1 foundation. And I think dabble a little bit in the tier 2, helping teachers to come up with strategies to help those kids in the classroom during whole group or during center time. Tier 3 is where an interventionist would come in to get those other students 5 to 10% typically that need extra help.
Other questions? Did you want more detailed data, or do you want to just stay with the high level data?
So I did some really basic math.
Mm-hmm.
If we assume that, isn't there about 300 students per grade?
That's the bubble. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about the bubble.
So that's, I think it was 13-ish% of kindergartners that did that bump.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
It's really good. Again, it's not something that is typically seen at these grade levels. This is a big accomplishment for our teachers, and I do want to stress how amazed, proud the district should be in our K-3 teachers for the ways in which they are wrestling with data. They're using the data to plan their instruction. They're meeting regularly to talk about this data and to figure out how they can improve outcomes for our students. It's hard work. It really does a lot of soul searching, because most people's first response is to be defensive. And these people instead, our teachers, are amazing, because instead they are looking at how do I improve to better serve our students. And that's a big asset to our teachers, and it's because we have such a good instructional coach who's able to facilitate those conversations, and we have administrators at the buildings who's encouraging and consistently going back to that data so that we can improve.
So this takes time for teachers to be able to collaborate together, to collaborate with the coach, to collaborate with their grade level teams. The comprehensive plan is on the agenda tonight for approval. Within that plan, it speaks to a data warehouse to make this work even easier and more efficient, to be able to pull the data out quickly, identify the students, identify the areas, and then to have the conversations in those meetings not be about finding and looking at the data. It's about analyzing the data and then planning what we're going to do next. So data is great, and the best quote I can say is, "So what? Now what?" And a data warehouse allows us to do that. We're already hitting the now what, but in the comprehensive plan we speak to a lot of the things that Dr. Donat's talking about.
I think that's it. Yep. All right. Thank you all.
That's it.
Thank you.
You can go more if you want more.
No, I just wondered. You acted like there was more, and I was surprised.
I have more data if you want to see it. I can show it to you later, or we can go through it now. It's up to you guys and how much patience you have.
But she woke you up.
No, she wake me up. I was listening to it. It's important knowing how many kids are going to go with us.
We'll bring her back, Fred.
Okay.
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 All right, so that concludes our committee of the whole, and we'll we'll take a brief recess until 8 o'clock.
An hour. 3, 4.
assume so.
You could say on a potential purchase. I told him that maybe he wanted to leave on a potential purchase.
Yes.
Executive.
Yeah, I would.
just leave that. Okay.
All right. I'm ready. Are these?
They're supposed to go in this order, though.
Hello and welcome to the Shippensburg Area School District Planning in Action. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Here.
Mr. Mike Carey.
Here.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
Here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz. Dr. Michael Lyman.
Here.
Mr. Kirk Noggle. Mr. Fred Scott.
Here.
Mr. Darren Donovan.
Here.
Mrs. Steph Eberly.
Here.
Mr. Leo Blanc.
Here.
1 second. I'm getting Mr. Noggle on the phone. He's
He probably lay his feet up and drink with a drink in his.
right here.
By the pool.
All right. 1 second.
Kirk gets here.
All right. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. This meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the students in the Shippensburg Area School District. And may we also remember Mrs. Myers, 1954 graduate of the Shippensburg Area High School, Patsy Shope, 1957 graduate, Ralph Mazingo, 1963 graduate, Jennifer Hamilton, 2007 graduate, and Jackson McManus, senior at the Shippensburg Area Senior High School. Mr. August, are there any changes to this evening's agenda?
No, ma'am.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Let's go and make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We've come to the portion of the meeting providing an opportunity for public comment. The board will follow the procedures established in Policy 903, public comment in board meetings, which is accessible through the district's website. This time is designated for district residents and taxpayers to comment on the items listed for action or deliberation on tonight's agenda. All individuals wishing to comment this evening must have completed the document designated for requests to comment and submitted to the board secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Each commenter will preface their comments by announcement of their name and, if applicable, group affiliation. The public comment period is limited to no more than 30 minutes, and each statement made by the commenter will be limited to 3 minutes. And a second comment period will be made after the items for action or deliberation have been completed. At the second public comment period, commenters may also speak about items of concern or others matters involving the school district. Each statement made by the commenter during the second comment period will be limited to 3 minutes. First, we have Mrs. Wolfinger.
Evening, everybody. Becky Wolfinger, Southampton Township. So I'm speaking on 5G first, and I would encourage you all to really consider the community's disinterest in a school time change. For me, my high schoolers would probably appreciate sleeping in, But as a fellow community member, I have a major concern, or lots of major concerns for our future generations. Number one, 15 to 30 minutes of lost instruction is just that. It's lost instruction. Considering where we stand with the learning loss we are combating, that is huge. Number two, where does that 15 to 30 minutes come from? Historically, it's come from specials. And historically, that has been pulled from music, which has proven to help with student academic performance. Number three, how do you vote yes without a schedule and truly seeing where that 15 to 30 minutes comes from? And then I just want to comment on 3CB, which is the facilities meeting. So I attended last week and feel there's definitely a very huge disconnect in our community with the current status of the stadium, parking, potential costs, and the topic specifically of where football is going to be played next school year. I don't really think the community and potentially many of you understand the parking situation and potential financial implications if the only choice for our district is to actually add additional parking via a parking lot. I hope that you guys can please, during this update with the facility committee from the meeting last week, please shed some light to the community on the financial ramifications if the borough does not approve grass. What is that dollar amount? Many of you may or may not know what that dollar amount is. And I think that this honestly is the perfect time to have that discussion of what that dollar amount would be, considering you're working on next year's budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolfinger. Mr. Carr?
Hello, my name is Matthew Carr. I am from Southampton, Cumberland. First off, I'd like to say thank you, everybody up there, for your time and dedication. I know that can't be easy, but everything you guys do for the students, the teachers, the administration, I know sometimes people don't say it, but thank you for everything that you guys do. I am going to be speaking on 5G. I am a big proponent against 5G and the start times. Ms. Wolfinger took a lot of stuff that I wanted to say, so I'm not going to sit here and reiterate it. But whenever I was at the open forum that was at the middle school, it would be very hard to find a large percentage or even a small percentage of the people who were actually in favor of it. There was a lot of information that was given on the survey, and I believe the survey was really skewed, where it was trying to be put forth that it would make it look like people wanted this. Students were asked, would you like to come to school later? Well, who wouldn't like to go to work later? They were asked, are you tired in the morning? Well, who isn't tired in the morning? They were never asked on the survey, well, with school starting later, would you like to go to school later in the day? So there was some sort of, like I said, the data was skewed to favor the results of the people who were looking at trying to get this changed. The teachers overwhelmingly are against this. And between the students that I've spoken to, they are overwhelmingly against this. They want to keep things the same. And I know there's data out there that says, yes, it'd be better if students went to school later. Sometimes you have to ignore the data and do what's best for your community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Student representative, Mr. Blount.
Good evening, everyone. There's not much going on at the high school right now, but high school winter sports are finished. Tryouts for many of the spring sports teams are next week. Today was the Student Council's first blood drive of 2025. The American Red Cross collected 28 units of blood, which was great for a high school event. Many of our donors were first-time high school students. Thank you to all who donated. Save the date for April 23rd. It is another blood drive. This event will be open to the public. Please be on the lookout for ways to register. We look forward to seeing more donors. The winter dance was held this past Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. in the high school gymnasium. Students seemed to have an enjoyable time being able to socialize outside of school in a fun environment. And the musical Hadestown will be held here at Sashes, March 6th, 7th, and 8th. Please come and support the drama department. That's all from me.
Thank you. Career Tech, I believe we have a meeting this Thursday, so we will report next time. Transportation Committee.
I was unable to make the last transportation meeting.
There wasn't much went on. I mean, it was the biggest thing, putting the bus contract out for bids. I mean, I think there was another one. What was the other thing that was on there?
That was the main.
RFP, which is on the agenda.
For discussion.
Great. Facilities Committee meeting.
That would be me standing in for Mr. Noggle. I'm glad he sent a typed list so I don't have to read his writing. Facilities recommended securing a maintenance agreement for the planetarium. I think that ran out in the fall, and we need to re-up that now. Is that the case?
So there's some damage, some equipment's not working, so we do need to get that up and running.
Okay. Facilities recommended moving forward with securing architectural design pricing for the design of concession buildings for the stadium project. We would prefer, through facilities, finding a local architect if we could. High school gymnasium renovation project was discussed as to why an impact-resistant drop ceiling was chosen over an open ceiling design. According to maintenance, the cost ultimately was the deciding factor. No recommendation was made. Gym renovation also included discussing on relocating 2 basketball hoops and installing 2 new baskets. Maintenance has not been able to locate a contractor for pricing yet. No recommendation was made. The middle school auditorium lighting will need renovated in the near future due to lack of availability, proper dimmable lights. A conversion to LED lighting and controls will need done. Facilities recommended adding to capital expenditures budget for future replacement. Custodian shortage needs addressed as we cannot find candidates to fill open positions. And maybe that's discussed in some other committee as well, too. I don't know. The discussion on securing contract or increasing wages were discussed. There was no recommendations made through our committee as to yet. The research legal options through HR to find a solution. I think we talked with them about that. Facilities was presented with a $31,000 electrical change order for the current MS high school project. Facilities recommended that Mr. Linton review the contract and approve prints for potential errors and omissions. Facilities feels that the approved prints should have been designed and approved to meet current regulations. With the traffic study complete, it is believed that the district is deficient in the amount of parking needed to support football. It also appears we have no legal avenue, according to Dave Jones. In order to address this parking shortage, a hand-drawn concept drawing has been supplied to the borough of Shippensburg for discussion purposes. 4 types of parking surfaces were discussed: all grass parking, stone drive with parking or either side, and grass, all stone or asphalt. The stone driveway with parking in the grass seemed to have potential during the conversation. During facilities meeting, we recommended allowing borough engineer to give comment on the conceptual sketch. Without thinking of the process on Friday, the borough was contacted by Mr. Noggle to review the conceptual drawing. His apologies if that overstepped any boundaries, but we did want to try to keep that moving, so that was it to date.
On that part, if we don't get the we don't get the parking situations corrected soon, we will not be able to play football this fall. Point blank. There will not be enough time to put the lights up and the rest of it. We need to get this parking situation straightened out between the borough and the school district. So I know some people thinking, and I was one of them, that we'd be playing football this year. I don't know anymore.
So the resubmittal responses from TPD are in under construction right now. We expect that to report to get back to the borough's engineers in about a week and a half. Those plans do have do address the borough's concerns. So it'll be a resubmittal. They will have to review it to see if it's satisfactory or not, and then give comments back. So, right now the ball's in our court to get that resubmittal done with a solution to the questions that the borough's engineers had about parking. The intent of that is to show where the parking could be, and give it back to the borough's engineers for review. So there is a back and forth process to this, and right now, we're waiting for that report to get back to the borough.
Have the borough's plans changed from when they first denied us the right to put lights up? Have they?
So we had to do the traffic study, Fred.
Yeah, we did that.
So part of this is to get an answer on what and where acceptable parking can happen, and to count those spots to see if we get to a threshold that the borough will then approve. So there is some sort of there's a sort of evolution to it. But at the end of the day, the borough's got to tell us. They've told us how many parking spots we're required to have based on the traffic studies. TPD is using the drawings to, and I think in conjunction or parallel to Mr. Noggle's efforts to locate those spots on our property, and hopefully that satisfies their requirements. But we won't know until they get that report back and review it.
Well, that reports back and forth. The ping pong balls don't go back and forth that much. Can I get a written copy of Dave Jones' statement that we cannot?
So Mr. Jones is coming to the next board meeting, Fred.
Okay.
To speak
when
on legal matters in an executive session.
I've never heard of any ordinance or any where it can't be challenged. I want to know why he says that.
So, just one comment is we've heard lights football. I still don't understand why lights are just for football, because we have other fall sports. We have a soccer player sitting over there who can't play games in our new stadium under the lights because we don't have enough parking for football. I just, and this is things that I guess as a board we will figure out when Mr. Jones is here in an executive session, but I just still can't wrap my head around how.
So, I mean, I can answer some of that from my conversations with Mr. Jones. So in order to get built what we got built, the stipulations were no lights, no football. That was the agreement to get built what we got built. And just as a reminder, we got an incredible deal for the stadium that we built, so much so that it allowed us to add a state-of-the-art scoreboard and a state-of-the-art sound system. So I think some of the frustration we probably should think about, we would be in the same spot regardless, still trying to figure out parking without having a stadium, without having a track, without having turf, without a scoreboard, without a sound system, because we would have had to wait for this traffic study regardless in order to get approval. So this is truly the last piece hanging, a big piece, but it's the last piece hanging, to get there.
Well, I guess the one caveat to that is if it would have been submitted to be a football field, then they would have known what they had to approve up front, not in the middle after we've already done it. That's part of the issue too.
I hear you. What I would say is we'd still have to do traffic studies, and that would have been this season.
We wouldn't be putting the cart before the horse, and we would have known what we had to do at that time, not now in the middle once we have a field already up. So that's why it seems more frustrating, because we have to address it. And we got a beautiful field sitting there just waiting to be had.
Right, and like I said, I think the counter argument is we wouldn't have anything there because we would still be waiting for this answer. So our field hockey team gets to play on that field, our soccer team gets to play on that field, baseball gets to use it, everyone gets to use that field, which would not be there because we would still be waiting for this answer.
Well, but under the presumption that everybody was getting something, football hasn't gotten anything with that to date.
I would just add yet to that.
What are the ramifications that Mrs. Wolfinger was speaking to of the cost associated with the parking?
So I think we'll have to wait and see what's acceptable to the borough And then, if it's grass parking, I would assume we would have to do some kind of land move, excavation to make it flat or not. I mean, until our traffic study folks get the plan to the borough, we don't have any of these answers, because it may be, they accept it and we're good to go. And then we have to figure out what what we need to do to get access to that grass parking, which, is never going to be cheap. But it wouldn't be the same as paving, paving everything.
It's a lot cheaper alternative, absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, there's definitely going to be a scale there somewhere. Fortunately, again, the project that was only supposed to get us bleachers, turf, and a track came in under budget, so that we do have some leeway to do some mitigation for parking if needed be. But we don't get that answer until that report gets back, and then they give it back to us. The key is to get down to what will be acceptable to the borough for parking. And this gets us that answer where we've, it's in my time here, we've not had that answer from them previously.
Refresh my memory. The traffic study was done at the borough's request, but we had to pay for it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when before the traffic study, our engineers, K&W and E&I, said we had enough sufficient parking on our property right now to fit the borough's requirements.
That's the kind of the kicker to this, Fred, is we designed the stadium, the seatings are 5-to-1. We have met that requirement based on the traffic study of a divisional deciding game and a playoff game, which had high attendance. That number apparently is not satisfactory.
So that's part of my frustration. Borough keeps doing this, and we keep chasing them. They keep putting up new requirements. Because we go through this, there's no guarantee that they're going to allow us to have it.
So Fred, I think we've been closer than ever to be getting a solid answer on. So we know what the requirements are based on the traffic study for spots. Now what we're figuring out is where can we count and get those spots to get us close to enough to be able to get perhaps a variance, but we need to find additional parking, which we kind of knew going in. And just a reminder, we're talking about 5 nights a year.
And what's the probability of? I mean, the last couple of years we had playoff teams. Our teams may not be playoffs for the next couple of years. So we may never use those spots.
Mr. Scott, I'd like to just strike those words from the record.
I mean,
this time.
I want our teams to do well too, but let's be realistic. We may make the playoffs, but I'm not saying we're going to be up there in the number 1 fighting.
Right. So I mean, I think the 2 games that the traffic study occurred were worst case scenarios in terms of, one was to decide the division, and one was a playoff game.
Yeah.
So, any way you slice it, the study's the study. The wheels are in motion. Now we just have to give time for that report to get back to the borough, so they can evaluate it and make a determination on whether we've met their requirements or not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that takes time, and I know people are itching to move forward with it.
Go ahead.
Just one quick question. How many extra spots are we at right now? Like, how many is the borough saying we need?
So it was north of 800 spots required based on the traffic study.
I think it was around 530.
We're at 530.
34.
Got a little help from the audience. So we're about 530. The initial drawings, my conversations with TPD indicated that they were able to find 100+ grass parking spots. I think we also need to look at, are we able to park at the middle school and have those spots count? We're putting in a loop, which possibly could be used, to park in as well to get some additional spots. So I think it's going to be very much here's 70 spots, here's another 50, can we count these? But that's just conjecture on my part. I'm going to let the experts who do this for a living tell us where we can park, like where we have parking spots.
With all the current spots we have between the two schools, should they allow that, we'll probably fall about 250 to 300 spots short to that grand total of 850, whatever it is. So that's what we're trying to make up.
You mentioned it earlier about 5 games, and football will continue to be district contenders, just for the record. But we're still talking about 5 games. So I remember, I think it was Mr. Jones when he was here publicly, sat out here, and he did a little presentation as we were talking about facility things. One of the things he said was, think about shopping centers. When you see the requirements, and this isn't just Shippensburg, this is everywhere, but there's such a requirement for parking, and then those things just sit empty. And that is my fear, is that we as a district have to spend a bunch of money to put asphalt in for a lot of spots to sit empty outside of 5 times a year. And I think that's an incredible, if we were to get to that, I think that would be an incredible waste of money. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I still hold out hope that, between Mr. Noggles' drawings and our own, engineers' drawings, that we can get close to that number. Yep. And just to be fair, the borough has granted every variance that we've asked of them to this point. So, do we have to get to the exact number? I don't know, but I think being able to show that we're close to that number certainly helps us make the argument that a variance would be reasonable.
All right, and Dr. Donat already did the curriculum report for the mid-year K through 3 math data. Finance report, Mr. Barwin.
Yeah, I'll be quick here. It's just an update on the 3 construction funds, the 22, 23, and the 24 GISA project. If you want to open this up, Leslie.
Which one first?
I can do the 22 one. So the 22 has the middle school construction project, high school, middle school parent loop. So we're nearing the end of almost spending this down. It's about $870,000, and with construction just starting, the bills will start flowing in. So we have that, and then I think a $450,000 grant to go along with this project. Open up the 2023 bond. This has the stadium and also some planning that went into the parent loop. So you can see the stadium were spent through January around $4.2 million of a $5.6 million budget. So still some wiggle room. We still have a couple more expenditures to go there, and then possibly some leftover money for the lights. And last one is just the GISA, the asset protection bond. We're still working on spending the projects down with this one. You can see we're still at around $5.4 million to spend in that one. That's it. Thanks.
All right, and there is no superintendent's report. Moving on to the consent agenda. Item 4A, approval of the minutes as presented and attached from the February 10th board meeting. 4B, the finance reports that are attached. 4C is the 25-26 district calendar. A draft of the 25-26 academic calendar is attached. Item 4D is policies for the second reading, and those are 246, 308, and 823. Item 4E is the Employee Assistance Services Renewal. Administration is recommending approval of Exhibit Q between Work Partners and the Shippensburg Area School District effective February 1st, 2025 for the renewal of Life Solutions Services for Employee-Centric Programs and Services at the annual rate of $9,000. And there is a list of those services. Item 4F, the Personnel and Professional Support. There's a list of terminations, resignations, new appointments, transfers, and substitutes. Is there a motion to approve items 4A through 4F?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion?
Yeah, on that 4E, is that just like a reoccurring thing that we do every year, or is that just all new stuff?
No, that's the employee assistance program, Mr. Barr. We do it every year.
Okay.
Any additional questions, discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The action agenda, we have item 5A, the field trip to Millersville University. Student Services request approval for a trip on March 28th at Millersville University and to visit the Lancaster Science Factory. Is there a motion to approve item 5A?
Move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Bard, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion.
The Lancaster Science Factory is very cool.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5B, the comprehensive plan for the 25 through the 28 school year. The superintendent recommends approval of the attached district comprehensive plan beginning July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028. Is there a motion to approve item 5B?
Red Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion.
Mr. August, can you just explain for the public and for us what the purpose of a comprehensive plan is?
Sure. So it is a state requirement that every district LEA has a comprehensive plan, which is to look at primarily achievement data, PSSA and Keystone data, and then find strengths and weaknesses within that and develop a plan to improve. Within that is an opportunity, in my opinion, to take what the district's priorities are and to fold them into that process so it is less compliant and more truly strategic, which I think our plan represents. It's a great time to look at our mission and vision as a district, tweak those to align, and I think that would be the word I would most use. It allows for alignment of our vision, our mission, our goals to be articulated in a document, which we're required to do by the state. So really a compliance process that and I need to thank the committee, Mrs. DeLong, Dr. Donat for guiding that process to what I think is a pretty solid document that I'm pretty proud of, and it gives us a roadmap forward, I think, for the next 5 years, next 3 years, with goals and targets and action steps to get us there. Ours is really pulling in things that we are all already kind of working on, which is always good. You don't want this to sit on a shelf, and you have to dust it off. You want it to be a living document, and I think that's important. So it speaks to things like ELA and STEEL standards, but also profile of a grad type work. So very exciting document, at least for me.
So at the basic level, it's just a compliance thing, but you're trying to use it as a real kind of plan vision for really improving the district.
I think everything we do to that point should be aligned and should be pointing in the same direction, and this document does that for us, and allows the work that we've already started to be codified and improved. I think, again, a living document for us to take the next step as a district.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5C, the job description for the Timothy House Supervisor. Administration recommends approval of the attached job description for the Timothy House Supervisor position. Is there a motion to approve item 5C?
Red Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5D, the job description for the Timothy House Assistant Supervisor position. Is there a motion to approve item 5D?
Red Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5E is the affiliation agreement with Frostburg State University for practicum and internship placement. Administration recommends board approval for the attached affiliation agreement with Frostburg State University, Department of Teacher Education, for the placement of a student to complete their practicum requirements within the district during the spring 2025 semester. Is there a motion to approve item 5E?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carey, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion.
Just one student. Just one student got to able to participate.
Yeah, we don't get a ton of students from Frostburg State, so we need to have an agreement with them.
Okay, that's all I need.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5F is the planetarium management agreement. The Facilities Committee recommends approval of the attached service agreement with Ash Enterprises for maintenance of the planetarium at the high school. The last agreement expired on October 2024, so the inclusive dates of the new agreement will be October 1st, 2024 to September 30th, 2026, and it will be a cost of $4,400 that will be paid out of the maintenance budget. Is there a motion to approve item 5F?
Move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Bard, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion.
Is this separate from the planetarium thing that was?
That's exactly what we were
Or is
talking
this-
about
this
in
is it?
facilities. We were recommending.
It does have some urgency to it. We currently have a
So
strong
this,
course.
this addresses what was said in there. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item 5G, the school start time adjustment. The administration recommends the approval of the adjusted start times for elementary and secondary students to begin during the 25-26 school year as follows. The Shippensburg Area Senior High School start time, 8:05 a.m. Shippensburg Area Middle School start time, 8:05 a.m. Nancy Grayson Elementary, 9:15 a.m. James Byrd Elementary, 9:10 a.m. Shippensburg Area Intermediate School, 9:05 a.m. and Grace B. Lors would be 9:15 a.m. Is there a motion to approve item 5G?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Lyman. Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion.
Is this legal? I mean, is it?
It is.
What reason I'm kind of saying it? I thought the policy was a committee would make a recommendation, it would come to the board, then we would approve it, then the action would be taken.
So the outreach committee charged me with researching and coming up with a start time adjustment. So that was the onus for that, Fred. And it's a longer process than normal because there was a lot of research and we obviously had a lot of feedback.
But I thought, as Steph had made it perfectly clear numerous times, that you can't take any actions unless we, as a board, approve it. Right, Steph?
So typically,
Yes or no?
recommendations come out of a committee.
Yes. And they come to the board, we vote on it, and then the action is taken. I understand the outreach committee went to the superintendent, asked for this, he proceeded to do it, but we as a board did not approve it being done.
Right, but this is the vote here, Fred. I mean, so you can approve it or not right now.
Oh, okay. So,
It's not a done deal until the board votes.
I understand that part, but correct me if I'm wrong, nothing should have been done until we said so, at the initial point, at the discussion part.
But nothing's been done.
Well, it hasn't. We've done all this work here, so something's been done.
We have to have something to vote on.
My point is, every other time, he can't even take action unless we as a board approve it. Did you approve this action being done?
What do you mean, what action?
A committee makes a recommendation, then it comes before the board. We as a board approve it, and then the superintendent takes action. This didn't come before the board.
It's here right now.
So Fred, this would be the same concept as like out of facilities, that you guys as a committee, a majority of that committee can bring something forward to the whole board. This would be the same thing with the outreach committee. The majority of that committee wanted to see this brought forward to the whole board. So Bill and Leslie and a bunch of other people put a lot of effort into coming up with what they feel is the best scenario. And then that brings us to tonight, where we can vote yes or no as a whole board whether or not we want this to happen or not.
All right.
Just to add to that, it started outreach, but I'd have to go back and look, but there's been like numerous times we've talked in committee of the whole about this as well. Like, this isn't in, the town hall, but like we've met as a board with this on the agenda more than once. Like,
I mean, there was a presentation Mrs. DeLong did.
yeah.
I know one of the concerns with this from administration's point of view is that this schedule gives a little more planning time to the teachers.
So the teacher workday would remain the same, 7.5 hours. We're looking to trim 30 minutes of the instructional day at the secondary level. Depending on the building, it ends up being somewhere between 1 minute and 24, I think. And the other 16 and 10, I think. Time off based on transportation, getting kids to different buildings. So there would be an increase in planning time for the majority of teachers should this plan be moved forward.
And if it doesn't move forward, there is a workaround.
There is. It might be additional personnel, to meet.
Okay.
We're still in negotiations around
Right.
what planning time could or should look like.
So if this doesn't pass, that would necessitate hiring additional staff to facilitate that planning time for the teachers.
Should that negotiation piece come to fruition?
As part of negotiations that are happening
Right.
right now.
So, we're meeting planning time requirements now. This should that change through negotiations, it would be a greater challenge to get there. And I don't want to commit to it, but we'd have to look at it and say likely we would have to add personnel.
I think I was under the understanding too that none of the teachers supported this, even though they saw that it could have given possible.
I haven't heard any teachers speak for it.
Yeah, okay.
So just a couple things, and I missed the last meeting when this was on the discussion agenda. I was at outreach, and I was at committee of the wholes, and I was at the community forum. And I think the idea of this, like when I first heard about this was prior to outreach. This was like another board member, it's Dr. Goetz. Like he asked me my thoughts on this, like it's been a little more than 3 years, I guess. And I was like, it's crazy. But I have come around to understand a lot of the arguments for it, and there's cons with it as well. It's clear and it's evident that the community, or at least the people who have come to events or sent emails, are not supportive of it. Just a couple of things. In my own ideal world, I wish we had the ability to transport every kid in K through 12 to start school at 8:30. But we can't do that. That's not feasible. I think that would be great. We never explored that because we know that we can't do that. It's just impossible. Elementary kids, I actually understood and kind of got behind a bit of a schedule flip, which was out, that was out pretty early. But I understood the benefits of elementary kids going earlier and just seemed to be more focused and whatnot in the mornings rather than the afternoons. And then of course there's the data that shows, and what really maybe brought my full attention to it was when and I don't want to be political because we've all gone through COVID as a board, but when you saw states like Florida and California agree with something, and I think they both started, is it 8:30? Is their minimum?
I know the California mandate, I believe, is 8:30.
Yeah.
And then I think Florida next year goes to that standard.
And when I saw that, I was like, okay, those two states collide a lot in the people who are passing laws. So again, consider, and I've spent a lot of time like digging in and researching this and listening to what Mr. August brought and Mr. Long brought, and and community emails and all of these things. So there's the cons. Like I said, like losing a little bit of instructional time. Is 1 minute at one school a big deal? Like, no. But is maybe 24 minutes? Yes. Even if that's not like instructional, like sitting in a classroom, like a recess is important for those young kids. And, I don't know if it's possible that we skim lunches anymore, but even if lunch, like sometimes some kids' favorite part of the day is going to lunch in elementary school. So all of those things, like they all play a factor. So I don't think we have support for this. I think that there's some real benefits that if something would happen, like a flip, but it's not going to happen. It's not what we're voting on. But I just want to say thanks to Mr. August, Mr. Long. There's people who put a lot of time and effort into this. Thanks to the community. Honestly, most times, like, there's more people here in our board meeting tonight than come to most any board meetings since COVID. People have been voiceful in their, and that's a part of this process. So I appreciate all that. I appreciate all of the emails I got, which were plenty. So that's where we're at, and we'll vote here in another minute or so.
Any additional comments? Caleb, can you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Bard?
No.
Mr. Carey?
No.
Mr. Kressler?
No.
Dr. Goetz is absent. Dr. Lyman?
Yes.
Mr. Noggle on. Mr. Noggle?
No.
Mr. Scott?
No.
Mr. Donovan?
No.
Mrs. Eberly?
No.
7 no, 1 yes. Motion fails.
Discussion agenda. Item 6A, grant approval for the Shippensburg Area High School, Middle School, G Blues, and Nancy Grayson. The Greyhound Foundation seeks approval to disperse $9,000 or $2,250 for above-mentioned school buildings to offset expenses related to each school's PA required yet unfunded mandate for PBIS programming. 6B is the appointment of the school dentist. Administration will recommend approval of the attached 3-year contract for the appointment of Michael Morehouse, DMD, Morehouse Family Dentistry, as school dentist beginning July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028 at the following rates.
Did
Six.
we not have a school dentist before?
It used to be Dr. Denning, and
Yeah, so it's been Michael Morehouse the past 3 years, every 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have one, and
Right, and a school physician. I just haven't heard back yet from the same school physician. They're on the same timeline for contracts being up.
Is that a bid process for those professional
hasn't been.
services, or no?
Hasn't been. And it's very slight increase than what we've seen in the past for the dentist for his last 3 years. It's a slight increase.
6C, armed security at sporting events. It's the recommendation of the Safety and Security Meeting for the Committee for the district to have an armed security person at home varsity sporting events. The cost for one individual would be approximately $8,000 per year and would be paid out of the PCCD grant monies.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
This goes back like 2 hours ago when we sat here in the budget presentation, but isn't that same PCCD grant money's the one that is in on
So-
going forward?
That's why you see and/or the general fund, because of the uncertainty around PCCD granting.
and would these be our SRO folks, or is this
That's the thought.
contract? Okay.
Item 6D, the Shippensburg High School prom. The class of 25 advisors, Jennifer Mowers and Heather Kaufman, will recommend approval of the attached contracts for the 2025 prom. 6E, the contracted pupil transportation request for proposals. This is the RFP that was brought up at the Transportation Committee meeting.
I got a question on that.
Yep.
I was told that we would change that from you got to have a $10 million liability versus they was 5 before. Is that true?
Mr. Bart, I'd have to get back to you on that.
And the other thing is that when I was in the transportation meeting and we talked about this, but I didn't take into consideration when we did that. If we hire a new bus company in, there's going to be a lot of jobs possibly lost in the Shippensburg community. I mean, you don't know if the new bus company coming in is going to hire the people we have already working for Boyo. So after we had that meeting last Thursday, Wednesday, I don't even remember when it was, I got thinking about that. On the way home, been thinking about it for a couple of days. It's just, I think we have somewhere between 75 and 80 bus drivers out in vans, maybe. That sound about right?
Yeah, roughly.
There's a possibility they could be out of work. And I think every one of them are community members. I don't think people are traveling from Mechanicsburg here to drive a bus. I just think they're all community members. So I think we probably need to, I understand what you're talking here by sending it out and getting proposal, but I really think we need to look at maybe working with what we got to secure, I don't know. That's just my opinion. There's other people on the board.
So I remember one time when we were sitting in a transportation committee meeting and it was said that we were possibly, because we didn't send out an RFP for all of these years, that we were also on the verge of.
So my understanding that had to do with federal, the receiving federal funds, the ESSER's monies, and the transportation that we provided with that required that. Mr. Bybee's done some research and he's found that we are not required to go out to an RFP. However, we didn't get necessarily recommendation out of the transportation committee one way or the other. So,
so 2 of us weren't there.
Right. So I think what I'm saying is we need some direction from the board. Are we going to RFP or are we going to open negotiations with our current providers? So this gets it on the agenda to have that discussion, because the committee wasn't able to give direction.
Can we take it back to committee?
So we can, and I think Mr. Barron was going to jump in. The clock is kind of ticking on this a little bit, Fred.
I understand that.
So we kind of have to come to a decision point.
I have a lot of questions.
Because our contract ends this year. So we would want to secure it in time, whether through the RFP process or negotiation, to make sure we have busing for next year.
Are we doing this for money? Are we doing this because of money?
Well, I think that with the new committee that's possibly forming, like with the efficiencies, you don't know what others have to offer if you also don't put it out to bid. We could ultimately possibly save money.
So we save money is the kicker here.
A lot of our decisions all come down to money.
Yeah, well, I understand that, but also the community and the people has to be relevant to the money. And I'm understanding, why are we doing this? Are we doing it for the money, or was
it? So an RFP would create competition, hopefully among providers, and that just like bidding out our projects, that can work in our favor sometimes. Again, Mr. Scott, this is to get direction from the board. Do we want to go out for RFP or do we want to do negotiations? So, the clock.
Boyo can also, the RFP, they can also submit their bid as well.
I understand that part. I'm not objecting to that. I just want to know, my estimation, I want to know, are we doing it because of the money?
So that there is
problems with
theoretically, Fred, it maybe 6 one, half dozen the other. Like when we put it out to bid, we create competition and some urgency to be the lowest bid to get the contract, which would benefit, and that may be Boyo, it may not, so, we're not under any legal obligation, to my knowledge, to go out to RFP on this, but we need direction. Administration needs direction on what we're doing. So,
like I'm saying, you could have another company come in here and not hire one of our drivers.
I've sat through.
One of the Shippensburg people not just said we don't want you, and they're gone. they're the ones that are paying taxes in here. They're the ones that's not keeping us going, but you know what I mean. I don't know. My suggestion is renegotiate.
I don't know how, Mr. Board, how they do here or not, or what options. I have sat through negotiations at other places where that's part of the criteria on the contract, is they had to offer our people jobs
Is it in
before
there?
going out the door, and if it's in the contract, they have to abide by that. I'm just saying it can be part of that. If you want it in writing, you put it in writing.
So this is just a request for proposals. We would still have to negotiate a contract after.
Correct. Yeah.
So we would add that into.
I thought Randy said it was already at the solicitor's getting.
The solicitor. Randy said it was
They
at the
told us that.
So it is at the solicitors right now. It is actually being reviewed. Given the timeline, I wanted to get it on the agenda, and when we get back, and I'm assuming it'll have minor changes, we'll update this item to the actual RFP that solicitor has reviewed.
So
Again, time is kind of the essence on this.
Yeah, two things with that. One, does anyone know the last time that we did take our transportation out to bid?
It's been over a decade.
Over a decade. That's what I thought. The second thing is when Boyo took over our contract from Lee Macbeth and Sons, because that was the last one. You make a great point about people and jobs and all that. I believe that a handful, if not most of those drivers from a decade ago were offered positions. I could be wrong. That is obviously something that someone else would have that information about. But just seeing bus drivers, a lot of those people that I saw driving buses 15 years ago were the same people I saw like 5 years ago. So I think that contractually, if you put something like that in there, that is something that can be fixed, I would think.
I think just to put this out there, I mean, there are other school districts also opening up their bus contracts for RFP, and who's to say that Boyo wouldn't go to another local school when they're putting out RFPs as well. So I think that keeping our...
As long as we're comparing apples to apples.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, we are not required to go out to RFP for these kind of things.
Mr. Bybee indicated that we are not.
Not go out to RFP this year. Just my opinion.
What'd he say?
He said he would Kirk said that he would prefer not to go out for...
I like a reason why we're going out, other than money. So if the Boyle's not providing the service we want, got no problem. But just to say we're going out to RFP without any reasoning, to me, I can't do it.
So I guess similar to what Fred's saying, those that are that were at the meeting, what was the thinking behind putting this on the agenda as an item?
So there was only one person at the board meeting.
But he didn't bring it up. It was
no
already
recommendation there. But it need time. It's time. I mean, it's time sensitive.
So
That's
just
why it's on there.
something had to happen, and so this is
So
where
because
we
there
are.
was only one member out of three, which is not the majority, and there was an administrative recommendation because of the urgency to get it on for discussion. So now that we're here, and I guess we could maybe decide now, because in committees we don't vote, we can do recommendations.
So
We can do it now. Like if this is something that you want to move forward with, I would much rather it, instead of wasting anyone else's time.
the questions I want to ask. I guess Randy has got to be your superintendent. To be getting what Randy telling it. I need Randy in front of me to ask him specifically.
But if you give me those questions, I can get them to you and get those answers back to you.
What do you think, Darren?
I mean, I'm not in the transportation committee, but I don't have some of the insight I guess maybe some of you other guys do. But I feel like if you've been with somebody for 10 years, you can look at that two ways. They've been loyal if they've provided us the proper transportation. There hasn't been any issues. That there's one thing to be said about that. But then on the other hand, you could argue that 10 years, it's probably worth a look to see what else is out there. You know, cost savings and just seeing. I mean, if you look at it as from a business standpoint, I would be in favor of looking at it just to see what else is out there and to compare.
I mean, this is a discussion agenda, so we could have more discussion when it's on the action agenda in 2 weeks, and and maybe have Randy here.
Another transportation committee meeting.
And so we don't have to make a decision tonight, right?
No, it's on discussion.
Right. So it's on discussion, and maybe
I'm attempting to force a decision largely.
So,
a direction, I guess.
Maybe, I mean, if the board is interested, like we have our transportation folks here next time to answer some questions maybe, and then we can make a decision.
That would be an excellent committee of the whole.
Yeah.
I would just say too that like we've been talking about this possibility for at least 6 months at the transportation committee meetings about the idea of going out for a request for a proposal. So this is not a like new topic, and so I would just and this that we can that we've talked about it a lot, and
I don't.
This was brought up 2 years ago when Levi and I were on the transportation committee when we actually reopened up the contract for Boyo. And I think we've actually opened it up twice for them. When really we had no obligation to, but we did. But this was a discussion to open it up for RFP more than 2 years ago as a recommendation from the transportation committee. I mean, again, like it's not new.
It's
I
news to
definitely
me.
would have liked for it, in an ideal world, for it to have come from the majority of the committee, but I do understand time is of the essence.
And I would say too that like we haven't had a full transportation committee meeting in a couple of months. So the last couple of months we haven't had everybody there. So, Mr. Bard, you said at the last meeting, I'm the only one here. I don't really feel comfortable making a recommendation. And I think the meeting before that, you were the only person there at that meeting too.
Well, just like I told you, I got thinking about the whole situation. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't take it out there, but that's just something to take in consideration.
Yeah.
You may end up losing, could be 75, 80 people lose their jobs in the community.
Mr. Bart, I just got a text from Mrs. Weber who said we did keep a majority of the drivers when we transitioned. For whatever that, whatever that.
Last thing.
But anybody can bid on this.
Well, local bus companies.
So the big giant companies could be the one that we're dealing with.
So, Fred, what I would say, the landscape of busing is I would say tenuous. Drivers are hard to find. A lot of districts are struggling to maintain their fleets. I don't know that a huge some of it's geographic too. We'd be looking at the Chambersburg area. We'd be looking at Carlisle area.
Having their own troubles.
So
I don't know advantageous for us.
You can also choose not to accept any of the bids and then just renegotiate the contract with Boyo. Like that's an option too. So you can get bids and then.
So we could get the information we needed to price compare, and then if we still think
like anything,
we could still go with Boyo.
And for me, I feel that if you tell me Boyo's not providing the service, or it's costing us more money, Boyo rather, I'm good to go. But I haven't heard none of that. I just see a local company, and every time I look, a local company is not getting consideration. We're always putting it out, and someone else from another place is getting it. I believe Shippensburg people should have a first shot at anything. And so that's my concern.
And
I'm only one vote.
There is still a driver shortage, right?
I would hesitate to make too broad of a blanket statement, but I know locally, transportation is an issue for a lot of districts.
So it doesn't seem like it would be a smart business move for any company to say, here are existing drivers that are driving buses and we're not going to rehire them when we get the contract in the same town. But thanks for all the input.
So we'll arrange to have Mr. Bobby here for the committee of the whole next week.
6F, Confidential Employees Handbook. Administration recommends approval of the attached handbook. 6G, the Assistant Business Administrator job description. Administration recommends approval of the Assistant Business Administrator job description. While we do not have the complete PASBO efficiency study back yet, PASBO has recommended our accounting comptroller position be transitioned to an Assistant Business Administrator position. The reason PASBO provided for this change are the size of our district, overseeing day-to-day operations, to allow business administrator for a higher level of planning and analysis for the district's finances, additional day-to-day duties, and assistance with annual state and federal requirements.
Are we advertising for that position now?
We are. We currently have 13 interested folks.
Any additional comments, questions, discussion on any of the discussion items? We are now to the citizens' comments regarding non-agenda items. I have 3 here. So just please identify yourself by name, borough, or township. All comments to the board as a whole, and make sure they are in the form of a statement. Questions will be taken under advisement, and responses to questions will be offered after due deliberation and will be provided by the superintendent at the direction of the board within a few days of the board meeting. You'll have 3 minutes for your comments. First up, Mrs. Machuski.
Good evening. Tricia Macheski, Shippensburg Township, Cumberland County, mother of Brady and Levi. Thank you for your time again to comment this week. Since I was here 2 weeks ago, I joined a federal agent and a Pennsylvania State Police officer in educating Shippensburg Area School District faculty at the Unconference on February 14th. Approximately 125 professionals chose to come hear our message. I brought a heavy dose of reality to a formerly taboo and still very ugly topic. A save the date flyer was pushed out to families on Friday, February 21st, inviting them to an event on March 18th to learn more about social media awareness and preparedness. I was made aware that the Unconference team is working to find dates to get in front of high school and middle school students sooner and not wait until next year. I was told that district faculty will now be receiving their first training sooner than June. I've spoken with several administrators, assuring them this is not personal. I know I'm pushing. I will be relentless for my Levi. I come in the spirit of love, trying to help our students. Lastly, and most importantly, I've received 2 separate and unrelated messages. One from a mother in our local community whom I know, and the other from a mother in a nearby district whom I don't know. Both mothers reached out to me, thanking me for the life of their son. Both of their sons were victims of a sextortion attempt. Both of their sons were preyed upon. Monsters threatened to share their photos and destroy their families. The predators demanded money from them, and thank goodness their parents had shared my family's tragedy with them. They each remembered Levi and reached to their parents for help. They were victims like Levi. They didn't do anything wrong. They weren't online looking for predators. One boy was 13 and the other was 19. The difference is, unlike Levi, they knew what to watch for, and they reported what they knew to be a crime. So let's talk about internet safety and screen time. According to the FBI's presentation last week, 10 is the average age when a child gets a cell phone. Some data would suggest it's more like 8, but for the following example, I'd like to use 11 or 5th grade, just to overcompensate. In Shippensburg Area School District, there are 2,252 children in grades 5 through 12. To be clear, children use cell phones and technology in and out of the classroom. Schools require learning on screens. Students have cell phones. There's lots of data out there, so it's difficult to assess exactly how many hours a student is on a screen, and I don't have time to give you all of my resources. I'm simply going to give you the number 5 to represent the number of hours per day a student ages 5 through 12th grade is on a screen. I feel that's very low, but still adequate enough to make my point. Figuratively speaking, 5 hours covers things like iReady, iXL, Kahoots, homework, streaming music, scrolling through YouTube, social media, playing video games, Snapchatting, texting, FaceTime, checking notifications, all screen time. And again, I think it's low. If each student in our district, grades 5 through 12, spends just 5 hours a day, each day of the week with a screen in our district alone, that is 78,000 hours. In 1 week. That's just our students. So, teacher training this spring is a start. A community night to introduce the topic to parents is good. Assemblies for middle school and high school students will be the first in our district. Then what? Parents are generally less tech savvy than their children. Take it from me, it's difficult to teach your child what you don't know. Predators are capitalizing on children's vulnerability and limited knowledge. So I am asking that Shippensburg Area School District include internet safety, awareness, and preparedness into their curriculum. Children are using technology in school. They must be taught how to use it safely. It's like getting a driver's permit. You have to learn all the what to do and what not to do before you drive. Then you practice with an adult, under supervision, of course. Then you take a test, and there are laws to follow or you lose your license. We are completely backwards with the internet, and our students are at risk. They are driving without a license. It's time to be proactive. Let's right the ship. Thank you.
Matthew Kirkpatrick and Miles Moore.
My name is Miles Moore. I'm a 6th grade student at the middle school.
My name is Matthew Kirkpatrick. I am also a 6th grade student at the middle school.
We are here to honor our friend Levi and advocate for ourselves and our friends to learn more about how we can be safe online. Since the tragedy with Levi, our families have tried to reach us about internet safety. They have encouraged us to go to them no matter what the circumstance, to not share information with anyone, even if we know that person well, and to be aware of the dangers on the internet. Even though this is good information to know, it still isn't enough, and some of our friends' parents haven't talked to them at all. This is why we are here today, to encourage that our school teaches us about internet safety as part of our everyday curriculum.
We have learned that districts close to us, like Central Dauphin School District, have curriculum that teaches students about online safety. We heard that Shippensburg is doing a presentation for families soon, and maybe an assembly for students this year. We do not feel like that is enough. We are afraid that students won't listen if it's only one time, and that we won't learn enough with only one discussion. We would rather have smaller, ongoing group conversations rather than one big meeting, so that we feel more comfortable asking questions and talking with our friends about what we've learned.
I didn't know something like what happened to Levi could happen, and most kids probably don't know either. We need our schools to help us understand how to stay safe when we are online, and we think it needs to be talked about all the time. We think the more we talk about it, the easier it will be to talk about it, and it will make it easier for students to come forward if they need help.
Thank you for your time and consideration on this important topic. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our phone number and email are on the papers we will give you.
Thank you. Tamara.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Good job.
Hi, my name is Tamara Smith-Moore. I live at 132 Park Place West here in Shippensburg. I'm a parent and a teacher in the school district as well. I'm here tonight to advocate for internet safety curriculums at every grade level. As a parent, I've spoken to my 8-year-old, 10-year-old, and 12-year-old regarding the horrific events that happened this past August to our friend Levi. My kids, knowing how cool, collected, and smart Levi was, were initially confused as to how this could have happened. We talked about how these heinous predatory acts are designed to take away the victim's decision-making skills, to gaslight you into wondering what is real, and to cause desperation and fear in its victims. We plan to talk about it again and again and again. As educators, we know that the value in repetition, but many families unfortunately do not. Some families have not spoken to their children, my friends included, because they just don't have the words and don't know what to say. I'm grateful to hear that the district has plans in place to speak to the middle school and high school buildings this spring regarding safe internet usage. I'm asking that in addition to that meeting, we consider adding this to our regular curriculum for the 2025-2026 school year and beyond. This will be to allow contact to spiral and provide opportunities for deeper understanding and conversations at a more personal level. I'm also asking that you consider programs for our younger students as well. As a kindergarten teacher, I listen to my students talk to me about how they watch their tablets, play games online, and believe literally anything and everything they see online to be fact. We talk about how most of the things that we see on YouTube are not real, but I can tell you that they do not agree with me. Recently, I had a conversation with a 5th grade student where we debated the truth in a video that he had watched. He was so sure it was all true when in fact it most certainly was not. I also talked to a 3rd grader who told me how he plays Fortnite with kids he doesn't know. I asked him how he knew that those people were kids and not adults. And he said, I know they're kids because they told me they were. Knowing what we know happened to Levi, it's just scary to even think about. Each year, I as an adult am required to take an online course to avoid phishing scams, and just today, I nearly clicked on one anyway. I've taken the course 4 times. Someone emailed me about pictures of English bulldog puppies. They're my favorite dog. I almost clicked because it came from an email address from my employer. If we can so easily be fooled as adults, our children really don't stand a chance without our support. It's also important to recognize that internet safety shows up in the PA early learning standards as early as 2nd grade and is explicitly mentioned in 6th grade standards as well. We need to start having conversations early and often about who not to talk to online and that everything we see or hear online is not true. These early conversations will provide a foundation for harder conversations that can come later in middle school and high school. I appreciate your time and consideration on this important topic.
Thank you. Mr. Hess?
Okay, this is going to sound real petty following that, so we'll keep it all in importance. But I wanted to go back to what Mr. Carey's facilities comments. One of the comments was about the ceiling in the gym, and it was cost effective. He found out it was more cost effective to have a ceiling rather than leaving it open. My question is, well, my first concern is I've been to a lot of gyms in the last 20 years, and in my opinion, the gyms that look the best are the open gyms. I don't even know of another gym that has ceiling tiles anymore. So just in that, and I don't know if I'm in the majority in that or not, but I would personally like to see an open roof or an open ceiling. My question is, whoever made this decision to put the ceiling tiles back up, do you know if they've contacted the Greyhound Foundation to see if they could pay for the difference or help pay for or raise money for whatever the difference in the cost would be to have an open ceiling compared to one with ceiling tiles in it? The Greyhound, I don't want to speak for Josh or Susan. I'm not saying they will do it. I'm just asking, did anybody contact them to see if that dollar amount could be raised, or maybe they have it, I don't know, through the foundation, since that is our money arm of our district? And
To my knowledge, that was not done, but I don't know, I assume that was part of the bid when it went out, so that probably wasn't even a thought.
okay, well, if it's possible, and we can find out the difference in the cost between open ceiling and a ceiling tile, just to get the information to find out how much the cost would be. And if other people in agreement with me about the open ceiling, we could always, it doesn't hurt to ask.
The maintenance guys did determine that, but I don't remember what the difference was.
Okay. But again, I'm not speaking for Josh and Susan, so I just thought it'd be nice if we could ask them to see if it could possibly be done.
I thought we did have an estimate on that it would be open and kind of painted to look nice because of the exposed.
That's what, until the last school board meeting, that's what I was under the impression that that's what we're going to have. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, we're going to take the ceiling tiles out. We're going to redo the HVAC stuff up above. And then we're going to put the new ceiling tiles back in. And I don't know who made that decision, but I was just wondering if it's a money thing, we could at least ask.
Money thing, because I know it would have to be refinished in some facet because
Right.
the cement.
Most are painted or,
Done or whatever, so it was going to take more to refurbish that than it was to put the ceiling back in, but I don't know what the difference to the cost was.
okay. And again, it doesn't hurt to ask. I don't know if the foundation would be willing to do it or not, but they raise money for us for a lot of stuff, so maybe they can. And I'd be willing to help if they need to. So, thanks.
Thanks, Tim. All right. We've made it to board comments. Mr. Scott,
No.
Mr. Carey,
Go FFA.
yes. Mr. Kressler,
Two things. One, do we have, I don't remember this and I should because we've talked about it a ton. The track and the surface, like, are we, because I got teased today because it's nice outside, so I'm starting to think about finished track. How many days of like nice weather do we need?
We need 7.
7 days of
Nighttime.
above 50. All right, global warming. Let's go. So that was my first thing, is just because I wanted to refresh my memory on that, because I really hope that our track kids that are seniors, have probably only ever had maybe 1 or 2 track home meets in their careers here, if that. So I'm really, really hopeful that we are able to get those kids on the track. The other thing is, in our budget meeting earlier tonight, not a lot of people here. That's to be expected. But one thing that we talked about some, and I would encourage everybody to do, is to go and read the performance audit report that was done by the Department of the Auditor General on, for instance, Commonwealth Charter Academy. I think the link, it will be on the website through the budget presentation Mr. Barwin gave.
Yeah, I'll post my presentation under the finance on the website.
That would be great. I mean, don't take this the wrong way. The energy that was around like school start change times was good. Like, that's what we want. We want to hear from people in the community. People were very passionate. People were very passionate and showed that they care about our schools. Another way to do that is to also read that thing and read how much money that private people or for-profit businesses are making off tax dollars that could stay right here in public schools like Shippensburg or Chambersburg or anywhere else. So it's a lot. It's like 300 pages if you print it, do front and back, and save some trees. But there's a lot of information in there that will probably infuriate anybody who's a real advocate for brick and mortar public schools. That's it.
Mr. Bard,
None tonight.
Dr. Lyman.
I would just second what Levi said. If you want a shorter version of the report, Education Voters PA did a nice little summary. You can go to their website and see it too. I just want to thank everyone that came and supported Tricia tonight, and for your courage. That's it.
Mr. Noggle.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, I want to thank Matthew and Miles for coming and speaking tonight. This world needs more strong and outspoken men. So you guys got a voice and keep using it.
Thank you. Nothing from me this evening. Thank you. Information date savers, February 25th. Outreach committee. March 5th, policy meeting, March 6th, facilities, and March 10th, budget and finance. April 18th through the 21st is spring break. There is no school for the district, and May 26th, there is no school.
Just to update, the outreach committee meeting has been canceled.
I have one question. With the committees, are we still on the same schedule?
So Fred, we're going to keep the same schedule until the policy committee has a chance to meet and work out a structure. But what's on the books, we're going to keep.
Carnival.